Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into the world of vagrant developers today. You want to hire one, but maybe you're not exactly sure what you need to know to find the right person. Am I right?
Sounds about right.
Well, you're in luck because that's exactly what we're going to cover this mini deep dive. But before we get into all that, I do want to mention theperfectdeveloper.com. They're the absolute experts at helping businesses like yours find amazing tech talent. And they've got this awesome tool called the 5 questions that is seriously a game changer. Think of it like a matchmaking service, but for developers.
I like it.
You just answer 5 quick questions and boom, you get matched with developers who are the perfect fit for your project. So do yourself a favor and check it out at theperfectdeveloper.com before we get too deep into things.
Okay, so let's say you're ready to hire a Vagrant developer, but what exactly does a Vagrant developer do? Well, in the simplest terms, a Vagrant developer is someone who specializes in creating and managing virtual development environments.
Okay, so kind of like building a virtual sandbox where developers can play around without breaking anything in the real world.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. They use a tool called Vagrant, and that helps make sure everyone on the development team is working with the same setup.
So no more of those, it works on my machine excuses when things go wrong in production.
You got it. Vagrant eliminates those headaches and ensures that what works for one developer works for all. Fewer errors, faster development, less frustration all around.
So a good Vagrant developer can really make a big difference in a team's productivity.
Absolutely. That's exactly what they bring to the table.
Now, how does a Vagrant developer differ from a DevOps engineer? Are they the same thing?
There is some overlap for sure, but they're not exactly the same. DevOps is more of a broad philosophy that encompasses the entire software development lifecycle.
Okay, so it's like the big picture.
Yeah, you could say that. A Vagrant developer, on the other hand, is laser focused on making sure that development environment is running smoothly.
So they're the specialists who make sure that Sandbox is perfectly set up.
Exactly. They're the ones who ensure everything runs like a well-oiled machine.
Got it. So do these Vagrant developers need to be like coding wizards? Or is it more about configuring environments?
They do need a strong grasp of scripting languages, things like Python, Ruby, or Bash. They use those skills for automation and to create blueprints for the virtual environments. We call those Vagrant files.
So they're not necessarily building complex applications from scratch. It's more about knowing how to configure and manage the environment itself.
Precisely.
Now, everyone's talking about Docker these days. Does a Vagrant developer need to know Docker as well?
Docker and Vagrant are both very powerful tools, but they work in different ways. You could think of it like building a house from individual bricks. That would be Docker, versus having a prefab house delivered ready to go. That's more like Vagrant.
That's a great analogy. It definitely makes it easier to understand the difference. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. What kind of salary are we looking at for a talented Vagrant developer?
Well, salaries can vary quite a bit. It really depends on experience, location, and whether you're hiring full-time or freelance. But to give you a general idea, in the US, you might be looking at anywhere from $80,000 to $120,000 per year. And that's for a full-time experienced Vagrant developer.
Okay. And I imagine if you're hiring someone overseas, you might find more competitive rates.
That's right, you often can. The perfectdeveloper.com actually has some really good data on average salaries for different locations and experience levels.
That's good to know. So location plays a big role.
It definitely does.
Now, let's say I'm putting together a job description for a Vagrant developer. What are the absolute must-have technical skills I should be looking for?
Well, obviously they need to be a Vagrant expert, but on top of that, they need to be comfortable with virtualization tools, things like VirtualBox or VMware. And knowing how to use provisioning tools like Ansible, Puppet, or Chef is also a big plus.
Those provisioning tools sound pretty important. What exactly do they do?
Well, imagine having to install and configure software on hundreds of virtual machines. It would take forever, right?
Yeah, no thanks.
That's where provisioning tools come in. They automate those tasks, making it much faster and easier to set up those environments.
So it's all about efficiency, making things repeatable.
Exactly. A good Vagrant developer uses those tools to create consistent, reliable environments, which is essential for a smooth development process.
This is all making a lot of sense. But where do we even start looking for these Vagrant ninjas?
Well, there are a few good options. You could try freelance platforms like Upwork, TopTal, and Fiverr. Those can be great for finding talented individuals.
Okay, what about more traditional job boards?
Those are worth checking out too. Sites like LinkedIn, Indeed, and Glassdoor. And don't forget about tech communities like GitHub, Stack Overflow, and Reddit. You can often find some real hidden gems in those places.
Good to know. think I've got the technical skills down now. But what about those all-important soft skills? What should I be looking for in terms of personality and work ethic?
You're right, technical skills are only part of the equation. A great Vagrant developer is also a great communicator, collaborator, and problem solver. They can explain complex technical concepts to other team members in a way that everyone understands, and they're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and figure things out when challenges come up.
So someone who's both technically skilled and a team player.
Exactly. Finding that balance is key to finding the perfect Vagrant developer for your team.
And the perfectdeveloper.com can help with that, right?
Absolutely. That's their specialty. They match businesses with the best developers out there, including Vagrant experts. Their 5 questions tool is incredibly useful for quickly identifying candidates who fit your specific needs.
This has been super helpful. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what to look for in a Vagrant developer now.
Glad to hear it.
And I definitely want to check out theperfectdeveloper.com and that 5 questions tool.
I highly recommend it.
It sounds like it could save a lot of time and hassle in the hiring process.
It definitely can. And it's not just about technical skills. A Vagrant developer's ability to communicate effectively, collaborate seamlessly, and think critically can really make or break a project. They're often the bridge between different teams, so they need to be able to explain complex ideas in a way that everyone understands.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like they're kind of translating the technical world for everyone else. So to recap what we've learned so far, Vagrant developers are like the architects of streamlined development environments. They use their expertise in tools like Vagrant, VirtualBox, and Ansible to create a consistent experience for the entire development team, minimizing errors and boosting productivity.
That's exactly it. And remember, their skills are in high demand globally, with salaries reflecting that. Finding the right Vagrant developer for your project requires careful consideration of both technical expertise and those all-important soft skills.
It's about finding the right combination of technical wizardry and a collaborative spirit. But with so many factors to consider, finding the right person can feel overwhelming. Any advice for our listeners on how to streamline that search process?
Absolutely. Remember theperfectdeveloper.com.
Of course.
Their 5 questions tool is a game changer. It helps you pinpoint the exact skills and experience you need, matching you with developers who perfectly fit your requirements. It takes the guesswork out of hiring and saves you valuable time and effort.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge help. Okay, so we've talked about what Vagrant developers do and the skills they bring to the table. But how does this translate into real-world benefits for a company?
That's the key question, right?
Yeah.
Imagine your developers being able to focus solely on coding. Instead of wrestling with environment inconsistencies, they spend less time troubleshooting and more time building great software. This translates into faster development cycles, reduced costs, and ultimately a higher quality product.
So they're not just streamlined development, they're directly contributing to the company's success.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the impact on team morale. When developers aren't constantly bogged down by frustrating environment issues, they're happier and more productive. It creates a more positive and collaborative work environment.
It's like a ripple effect. A
Mhm.
happy developer leads to a happy team, which leads to a successful product.
Precisely. Now, here's a thought-provoking question for your listeners. Think about your current development process. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the points of frustration? How could bringing a skilled Vagrant developer into the mix help you overcome those challenges and elevate your entire development game?
Yeah, that's a great question to think about. It's about taking a step back and really envisioning how a Vagrant developer can transform your workflow.
Exactly. And remember, theperfectdeveloper.com is an excellent resource for finding the right talent to make that vision a reality.
That 5 questions tool really sounds like a good place to start for anyone looking to hire a Vagrant developer.
It is. It takes all the guesswork out of finding the perfect match for your team and your project.
It's really fascinating how something like setting up the development environment can have such a huge impact on a team's success.
It really can, you're right. Inconsistency in those environments can cause so many problems down the line. Those bugs that only seem to pop up in production, or those frustrating delays in releases, not to mention frustrated developers. A good Vagrant developer can really help prevent those issues.
Yeah, and it's not just about preventing those problems. It's also about creating a smoother, more enjoyable workflow for the whole team. I mean, when developers have that consistent and reliable environment, they can just focus on doing what they do best, building amazing software.
Exactly. It really empowers them to be more creative and productive. They have that solid foundation to work from.
So it sounds like having a dedicated Vagrant developer on your team is a really smart investment for any company that relies on software development. They bring that expertise and efficiency to the table,
I completely agree.
and they give the whole team peace of mind.
Absolutely. And finding the right Vagrant developer doesn't have to be a difficult process.
Especially with resources like theperfectdeveloper.com. They and their 5 questions tool have made it so much easier to find the right developer for the job.
They really have. It streamlines the whole process.
So if you're ready to take your development process to the next level, you should definitely check them out.
Great advice.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about Vagrant developers in this mini deep dive.
I think so too.
We talked about their role, their skills, the tools they use, what kind of salary you can expect to pay, and most importantly, the value they can bring to your team.
Hopefully, our listeners now have a much better understanding of why Vagrant developers are so important.
And how to find the perfect one for their team.
And remember, investing in a skilled Vagrant developer is investing in the success of your entire development process.
That's a great point. Thanks for joining us today on the deep dive. And don't forget to check out theperfectdeveloper.com and try out their 5 questions tool. Until next time, keep diving deep.